Louis C.K.'s TV show Louie has been cemented as one of the most unique comedy shows in television history. It took something a lot of people appreciated about a show like Seinfeld and explored it in a much more dark and surreal way. One episode that really stood out to me was episode 9 in season 2 titled Eddie, which featured legendary stand-up comedian and drunk Doug Stanhope and treaded some incredibly serious topics including depression, self-harm, and a lack of purpose in one's life. This episode would end up being praised by Robin Williams as an incredibly powerful dialogue on the topic of self-harm and mental health. I recently rewatched this episode and had some thoughts on it that I wanted to share, so if that sounds interesting to you guys, then let's waste no more time and hop right into it. To begin with, the episode starts with the normal intro sequence and then is immediately followed with Louie doing stand-up comedy about how he feels he only has the courage to live a perfect life and how he sees people whose life is in shambles and knows that he would give up immediately if those were his life circumstances. A lot of the time, the stand-up sets early on in the episodes, before the plot lines happen, have nothing to do with the story that will unfold, but this time it fits perfectly to the story we would see take place with Doug Stanhope's character Eddie. Right off the bat, this is an incredibly dark subject matter we're seeing Louie cover, but obviously if you're a fan of his stand-up, you would know that this is very common and characteristic of Louie. Directly after the stand-up set, Louie gets off stage and sees Eddie, who he evidently has not seen in years. Eddie praises Louie for his career success while Louie modestly swallows these compliments. Aside from the social commentary, another thing I liked about this episode is it really zooms in and captures the raw and brutal life of a road stand-up comedian who isn't exactly a household name or commercial success, and juxtaposes it with someone like Louie who has had all the commercial success one could possibly hope for. With social media, the path to success for a lot of comedians has changed, but this dramatization really shows you an accurate portrayal of these relationships some comedians have together. We see this even more later on when Eddie is introduced to another seller comedian and he immediately starts shit with the guy and comes off as incredibly hard-headed and unlikable. Doug really nails this bitter tone that so many road comedians embody when talking to New York City or Los Angeles comedians. Then Louie and Eddie leave the Comedy Cellar to go to a liquor store where we find out he's been living out of his car for the last year. Eddie once again starts shit and gets into another fight with the guy working at the liquor store, further proving how difficult to work with and be around he is. Then after the commercial break, we see Eddie and Louie decide to go do a set at an open mic. To further illustrate Eddie's bitterness towards successful comedians, he says he doesn't want to do a club because to him, quote, that's where comedy goes to die, end quote. And he insists on doing a shitty open mic where he claims that real comedy takes place. Then we get to see Doug Stanhope go up and do a legitimately hilarious bit in this open mic scene.
Your host, ladies and gentlemen, please give it up. He should. Anyway, do you know how much stupid stuff we do just to get pussy? Sex is just so absolutely boring. It drives so many people to do so many ridiculous, so many problems. Sex is not, it's not even like, it's gross. It's disgusting. Do you ever watch porno after you come? Ugh. I get a boner, it springs up on me randomly. I treat it like the medical condition that it is, and I drain it like a cyst quickly. If you go up to the top of YouPorn next time you're on YouPorn and click on recommended for you, they track what you beat off to. It's like Amazon. People who beat off to this also beat off to this and that. No idea what I'm doing with my life.
These bits are all vintage Doug Stanhope, and you have to appreciate them if you're a veteran fan of stand-up comedy. Then we see the legendary dialogue between Louie and Eddie take place, where it starts to escalate in seriousness. We get to the core scene of the show where Eddie starts to open up about all the bridges he's burned in his career and apologizes to Louie because he perceives that he's burned their bridge as well. On top of all of this, he starts talking about how he feels like his life is meaningless.
So what's up, man?
Okay, look, I know I burned our bridge. You know, we're old friends and all that, hooray, but I got no bridges left. I burned all the bridges, I burned the roads, I burned the trails, I burned the hiking path.
So what do you need?
I don't need anything. I just want to talk to you. I want to tell you something.
Okay.
Look, man, I'm cashing in. I'm done. I'm 40 shit years old. I got nothing. I got nobody. And I don't want anything. And that's the worst part. When the want goes, that's bad. I mean, like suffering is one thing, or not having is one thing, but when you just don't care anymore, I've gone soft in the last 3 pussies I've been in. You get to a point where you go, maybe it's time to just put a period at the end of my whatever this was.
So you're gonna quit comedy?
How dense are you? Comedy? Who gives a shit about comedy, man? My life. I'm going to end it.
Louie is really taken aback by Eddie telling him he plans on taking his own life, and he even tells him about the prescription his doctor gave him.
I went to a doctor, and I'm just trying to get a script for Ambien, and I'm bullshitting the guy, the whole fear of flying nonsense. And the doctor gets his look on his face like he knows, like he's gonna chuck me out of the office. All of a sudden, he gives me these. It's Phenomedrine.
What is it?
He tells me, only take one of these a week. He tells me, do not take more than one. 2 of these will stop your heart.
A doctor gave you that?
Yeah, it made no sense at first. I mean, look at me. You take one look at me, you're gonna give me these with a verbal warning?
Well, why would he do that?
Because he took one look at me and he realized that's the only prescription that's gonna improve my life. It's death.
Jesus Christ, Eddie.
No, the guy's right. I mean, the guy probably deserves a Nobel Prize. I'm going to Maine, I'm gonna do my show, get a lobster roll maybe, get a motel room, and then throw 3 of these things down my head with some cognac.
Why are you here telling me this right now?
I don't know. I guess I just wanted to say goodbye to someone.
Eddie, this is bullshit. You can't kill yourself.
Oh, yes, I can. I have a note from a doctor.
The acting right here between Doug and Louie really is something special. We see Eddie explaining what he perceives as a doctor telling him to end his own life, and we see Louie, who is genuinely concerned for his friend's life but can't look him in the eyes and tell him one good reason that he should stay alive. The dialogue here is so well written, and all the bitterness from earlier in the episode really makes sense with the position of Eddie's life right now. Then we see the ending credits as well as another stand-up bit to conclude the episode, and it's all over. Later on, we get to hear Louie talk about this episode with Doug, and he shares his thoughts on why in the past he has worried about Doug's health before, and how Patrice O'Neal's death caused Louie to worry about stuff like this with fellow comics.
It's emotional to hear that clip now because, I mean, I wrote that about a lot of comedians I knew coming up, and comedy and show business are very cruel, and they don't have a nice way of saying no or goodbye, you know? And a lot of guys live really tough lives in this racket. And I've known a lot of them and come up with some of them, and some have made it, some haven't. And, you know, the idea of somebody saying to you, look me in the eye and tell me I have a reason to live, it's terrifying to think, what if I fail them in that moment? And Doug Stanhope is somebody I've known for a lot of years, not well, but I've always known him. We've traveled the same paths, and I love Doug. I have real affection for him. And, you know, he doesn't take very good care of himself, and he, you know, medicates himself in many different ways. And I've always been scared for him. Then I look at what he writes on his website, and I've listened to him, and I realize that there's something narcissistic in my fear. You know what I mean? Like, he's taking care of himself, and he's making his choices as a grown-up. And so that was sort of an evolution of thinking for me. But then the reason I guess it's emotional now is because I lost my friend Patrice. Sorry.
No, that's okay. This is the comic who... You want to take a break for a second?
No, it's okay.
Okay. This is the comic
Patrice...
You dedicated your special to him. And
yeah, Patrice died of, you know, in a diabetic coma. And he didn't take good care of himself.
It's really awful to hear this, especially when you realize it had only been 2 weeks since Patrice died when Louie had done this interview, but I really found it interesting to hear what he had to say. Then Doug talked about this episode and how it was praised by Robin Williams in one of his comedy special tapings. Hilariously dark, but brilliant as always from Doug Stanhope. Just the idea that Robin Williams saw this episode and resonated with it so deeply makes me very sad for him, but for him to give such a high compliment about the tone, themes, and acting of this episode really shows just how powerfully written the dialogue was for the show. Doug also talked about the episode a little bit on We Might Be Drunk with Sam Morrill and Mark Norman, and Sam sheds a little bit more light about how Doug's character embodies the nihilistic road dog comedy lifestyle very well.
Dude, by the way, your episode of Louie is one of the best.
Oh, that's killer.
Was incredible.
Good.
That led to
absolutely nothing. I got not one offer based on that.
So good because it's an inside episode about like that road comic between bars, but it was broad. It was like it just I mean that was one of the best episodes.
He had no idea how on the fucking nose that was.
Oh yeah.
Like the dialogue, like I'd said a bunch of that shit myself, basically, not word for word, obviously, but like I've talked about all that shit. It was like me if I didn't have money. Just the nihilism in the character, I swim in that on a daily basis.
Right, yeah, he captured that. And I remember you were going to these barroom, like underground open mics that were so sad. And at the time this came out, I was doing all those rooms. And it was like,
he was at the Lantern. I was like,
yes.
I did a spot there that night.
Exactly. The
and
Lantern.
that was like real open micers. Like,
oh, yeah.
He just said, okay, just do what you do anyway. And
what I really appreciate about Louie as a show is how it's similar to Seinfeld in some ways when it comes to these weird everyday occurrences that most of us experience, but it's a little bit more brutal and surreal because there's no laugh track, and Louie does not shy away from darker subject matter, even if he knows it might make people uncomfortable. Louie also does a very similar thing in his stand-up act when he treads incredibly dark subject matter, so I really appreciate his show for doing what it did, especially on the topic of self-harm, depression, and mental health. It's also right on the nose if you've ever done stand-up comedy or hung around open micers for a period in time, because a lot of them, when you talk to them, are not doing too well as people, and it really seems like they might be 2 or 3 bad nights away from giving it all up. Really brutal stuff, but this type of storytelling is what made Louie such a great show and led to it being nominated for Golden Globes and Emmy Awards multiple times. I'd love to finish Louie and make a review on the TV show if that's something you guys would like to see at some point, so leave a comment down below if that's something you'd be interested in seeing later on, and if enough of you say you want it, I'll get to work on it right away. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this little breakdown of one of my favorite episodes of Louie. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and hype the video so more people see it. Also, if you want more content from me, make sure to click the link on your screen to check out this video where I compile some of my favorite Norm Macdonald moments of all time. Click the link on the screen to check that video out next. Other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care of yourself, and God bless.